It says Trek Live's going live. I haven't gotten that. Nothing.
Oh. I just got the notification. So, let's see here. Try refreshing the page. It says, or give it a second, maybe.
Yeah, lots of times it's a little bit delayed. Yeah, I can see it.
Yes. All right.
Sort of.
With that, we are finally, I think we are live for episode 98. Bill, what are we talking about this morning?
We are talking about Star Trek captains. We're going to guess each other's rankings of the captains, who our favorites are, or least favorites, if we have least favorites. But yeah, this is a kind of a spin-off of the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago. We were guessing each other's favorite characters, but we kind of made a decision to leave the captains off of that conversation, for maybe fear of the captains sort of dominating that conversation. It'd be easy to like go with series leads in a who's your favorite character kind of conversation. And the captains are such a heavy conversation in itself that we figured that it would carry its own conversation. So we're doing that today. And while I had I can just like throw this out there at the beginning. I felt pretty confident going into the favorite character conversation and guessing yours. Maybe not so much with the order. I was a little questioning of that, and I wasn't 100% on the order, but I had the characters pretty. This one, I feel like it's more of a shot in the dark. I feel pretty good about the number one captain on your list, but the order beyond that, I'm very much just kind of taking a shot in the dark. I don't really know, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I feel like I'm in the same boat as well when I'm trying to put your list together. I'm fairly confident on number one, but the rest, I don't know. That being said, we didn't really talk about kind of drawing the line of sand of kind of which captains are you going to include, like, because the captain position has changed since Discovery's been on, because we've had two captains since. So it's going to be tough. It should be fun though. It should make for a fun episode.
Yeah, I mean the Discovery dynamic definitely changed the conversation a little bit. Before Discovery, there were 5 kind of easy captains, one for each show. But Discovery, because of the nature of the show, how it's structured, we've had 2 captains in 2 seasons who were very, very different, but very distinctive.
Yes.
Very big characters in those respective seasons. So how they factor into is, I think, and actually depending on how you count them, that you could go with 3 captains. Even you could count George Joe in that.
That's true.
She's only really in the first couple episodes. So it gets kind of complicated. It's more choices now than maybe it did before a couple of years ago. And I feel like the last time you and I really talked about like who's your favorite captain, it was a long time ago. We know each other's. I think that's pretty in stone. I mean, we know that, but beyond that, we haven't had this conversation, and if we have, it was a long time. So, and it was almost definitely pre-Discovery.
Yeah,
this is going to be. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'll just say it right now. None of the Discovery captains made my top 5.
Okay.
Yeah, just putting that out there.
I'm unwilling to say that on my list.
You're not willing to say that?
I'm not willing to go.
Oh dear. I may be way off. Okay. Yeah. Let's, before we jump into it, before we see my embarrassment of trying to pick Bill's rankings. Bill, how's the rewatch going?
Rewatch is going pretty well. I finished season 1 of TNG
Okay.
last weekend.
Yeah.
I put out the Trekkie Awards. I put out the episode rankings for my episode rankings. I put out the episode rankings that the Twitter polls hashed out.
Mhm.
So I probably won't watch season 2 this weekend, but I'm hoping to dive right into it next weekend. And I usually take a weekend,
Gotcha.
like to kind of buffer between seasons for some weird reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, season 1's done. I'm always like I said this a couple weeks ago when I hit that sort of like 3/4 point in season 1. But I feel like season 1 kind of lifts off a little bit around the 3/4 way mark, around home soil, coming of age, like 18-19 of the 26.
Conspiracy, all that run.
Conspiracy at the end of the season. I like Skin of Evil, Personal Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I think Heart of Glory is fun. I really like Coming of Age. It gets a little bit more consistent around that point. Very few, real stinkers. I'm not huge on Symbiosis. I'm not huge on We'll Always Have Paris, but they're not total failures. Like they're interesting things in those episodes for me.
Mm-hmm.
They're not fall flat on your face the way Code of Honor is, or The Naked Now. So when I think of season 1, I think a lot of people see it as like an unsuccessful season, maybe. Except Jordan, who came on our show about a year ago and defended season 1. He's a fan. So there are people out there who love season 1, but it gets kind of derided a lot out there. And I think the first half of the season probably deserves that label maybe more than the second.
Yeah.
But I also posted a poll on Twitter that got a decent number of responses. The 2 seasons of Star Trek that I think consistently get the most derision, that get knocked around the most, are the first season of TNG and the 3rd season of TOS. So I asked, which season of these 2 do you prefer? And for a big chunk of time, it was literally 50. And it came out 51-49 in favor of TOS season 3, which I thought was interesting, with like 160-ish votes, I think. Yeah. But with well over 100 votes sitting at 50-50, I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But
I was able to squeeze 1 episode this week. I had a busy week with work and stuff. So I watched Shore Leave. It's the episode with the Ridiculous Bunny and Alice in Wonderland, but it has the charm to it that I like in TOS, so I didn't mind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got some corniness. It's got some very 60s like romance with Kirk and his old girlfriend he left behind appearing. It's good. I remember loving that episode as a kid. I think like running around outside, lots of location stuff.
Yep.
Very much like a pretty light. Like there's some dark stuff that happens towards the second half of the episode. Yeah. McCoy gets killed, and it goes to some pretty dark places. But it feels. It definitely has like a light tone that when I was young I definitely loved, and for that reason, depending on who you ask, some people would categorize that one as like a fan favorite. But I think it's more in the middle of the pack for me.
Yeah. Same with me.
Cool. We have Adam in the chat. Welcome, Adam. And says if we really wanted to make things complicated with our captain ranks, we could go with Captain Jellicoe. Like that's the thing. If you want to include like the random other captains, you could. I can't say I did that. I think that's almost like another conversation, like a completely different conversation, like one-off captains or guest star captains. There's a ton of them in TOS and TNG, and you get like Captain Ransom and Voyager, people like that. That I think, for me, in my brain, the way it works, would fit better in a conversation like that. But that's a conversation that's worth having.
Yep.
I think.
Yes. Yep. Do you just want to jump into it? Speaking of captains.
Yeah, let's go right into it. Do we want to do it the same way we did last one? Like,
I will I will reveal mine and I'll read them out loud, and then I'll try to. Then you can read yours, and then I'll put them in the graphic, and then I'll put up a new graphic midstream. So, let's see if I can get this thing to.
Okay.
Yes. So mine. Guesses for Bill. I'll start at 5 because I think that might be the one in question. Janeway 5, Cisco 4, Archer 3, Kirk 2, Picard 1. Now,
Interesting.
yes, I will read mine now. I may be way off, but for me, Archer 5, Cisco 4, Picard 3, Janeway 2, and Kirk number 1.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So
you want what I guessed for you first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What I wrote down for you was Cisco 5.
Okay.
Lorca 4.
Mm-hmm.
Picard 3.
Okay.
Janeway 2. And Kirk 1.
You said what was 2?
Janeway.
Janeway. Okay.
Yep. So I feel pretty good about the fact that I got your top. I didn't really expect that. That I didn't know. I didn't feel good about Janeway 2, Picard 3. I thought that could flip.
Yeah.
I half thought maybe somebody else could sneak into that 3. I was pretty sure that was going to be the ranking of 2 and 3 was definitely very much a question.
Mm-hmm.
And now, do you want my actual?
Yes.
All right. My number 5 is Janeway.
Okay.
My number 4 is Pike. So I did dive into the Discovery
Yes.
pool a little bit. My number 3 is Cisco.
Okay.
My number 2 is Kirk.
Okay.
And my number 1 is Picard.
Okay. Before we jump into it, let me see if I can get this up on the screen for everybody.
Okay. Rob is in the chat. Now, Rob and Adam in this dead zone while Dan is updating the graphic to put everything on screen. I think this would be a really good time for you guys to share your 5 favorite captains. I know, Adam, how much you these questions. You always feel like I'm putting you on the spot, but I mean, you're here, so you have to do it. 5 favorite captains. And whose list can we guess your order, Rob? I think I can. I'm gonna give it a shot.
I think I can too, but Bill, you go ahead.
I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna go with number 5. Maybe I can't. I'm not feeling as confident in this as I should. I'll go with number 5, Kirk. I'll go with number 4. See, the Discovery captains are such tough.
I think Pike's in there for Rob's.
Yeah, I'm going to say Pike
1
is in there.
Yeah.
I think Janeway is going to be 1 too.
Yeah.
I'll say 5 Kirk, 4 Cisco. I'll say 3 Pike. I'll say 2 Picard, and I'll say 1 Janeway. And I'm probably completely off. Let me know. What do you think, Dan? Do you have a...
I think that's what I would go with.
Adam has already revealed number 1, Picard. It's not a huge surprise.
Sorry, guys.
Pretty close. 5, Kirk for Ralph.
Okay.
For Cisco. That's where I had the Discovery with Pike. 3, Picard. I think Pike's going to be up there really high. 2, Pike, and then 1's going to be... Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Pike is definitely a real sort of wild card. It's hard because when you compare him to some of these other captains, he's such a small sample size. You get him in TOS a little bit with Jeffrey Hunter, obviously, and then you get the 14 episodes of Discovery where he's not even really the lead. He's a supporting character to Michael Burnham in a lot of ways. He certainly got big moments, and he's very, very critical to that season. It's an interesting thing to kind of factor in.
Yeah.
So we got Adam says Picard 1, Cisco 2, Kirk 3, Archer 4, and Pike 5. So
no Janeway love.
We have 4 lists. No Janeway love from Adam. No Lorca love from anybody. We got some Pike on some lists. We got Archer on lists. Cisco on lists. Obviously Janeway and Kirk on lists. No Lorca. Lorca gets no love. Let's do the Mirror Universe tag.
Before we jump into go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
That was probably my toughest cut, was Lorca. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I stuck with, the main 5 is because it would have taken a lot to knock these characters off. And I just don't think right now it was worth that. So, that's why Lorca. That was probably my toughest cut, was Lorca, because I love Lorca. But, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love Lorca too, and having just watched season 1 of Discovery again, I think I'd have a harder time cutting Lorca if we were talking like strictly in the framework of performances, like who gives the best, just flat out, performance. Lorca, I mean, Jason Isaacs just wows me every time I go back to that, the layers of that performance and the little cues that he gives. But I think maybe the fact that he ends up antagonist maybe pushes him down the list for me. It's harder for me to put him on a list like this among these other characters. He almost feels like he should be on like the villains list, which I guess he is. But that's sort of the cool thing about his character. He's sort of, there are episodes where he's very much like, he's really not. He doesn't care, about helping the crew. Yeah. But he is, for all intents and purposes, at least in that. So he feels heroic at times, but he's really not.
Yeah.
So he's an interesting character in that you root for him sometimes, but sometimes you obviously can't.
Yeah.
But do we want to start kind of working up our lists, just kind of talking about why each of these characters kind of fits where they do and what we like about them?
Yes.
What our takeaways are. Why don't you start with Archer, who did not make my somehow?
I don't. You being an Enterprise guy,
I know.
I thought he was at 3. I thought he was higher for you, but a little bit off kilter there on that guess. But Archer, to me, I really think the second time going through Enterprise, this time around in my rewatch, I really, really appreciated, when I watched it the first time, I feel like he was really strong 3 and 4, but I kind of realized that he kind of, I really liked his character almost from the very beginning, watching it a second time. So I think that he definitely deserves to be on my list just because you know, his character, how it changes throughout just these 4 seasons, what he goes through, you know, I just think that he can't not be on the list. So that's why he's at number 5, just because his kind of I look at him differently now than I did, you know, first time I watched it through. So I wasn't the biggest fan of Archer, like when I watched Enterprise for the first time, but now he has to be on my list. When he unbuttons his undershirt, you know he means business, and I love that.
Yeah.
So
true enough. Tabone Capone. This is I think a first time guest in the Trek Live.
Welcome.
So how you doing, Tabone Capone? Welcome. Very happy to have you.
Yep.
And while you're here, if you could share your 5
Yes.
favorite Star Trek captains,
Yes.
and we'll certainly talk about it. Read them in the stream, make it a part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, Archer did not make my list, but I agree with everything you said. I'm obviously one of the bigger Enterprise fans. I think I love Enterprise. I think maybe what caused me to kind of cut him in favor of Pike, really, Pike being kind of like 6 months ago. Pike's obviously not really a factor on this list.
Yeah, why Pike?
Well, I'll get to that in a second.
I don't want to jump out. Yeah, sorry. I don't want to jump ahead. Archer.
For me, Archer. I love everything you said about the character, the way he evolves over time. I am somebody that actually kind of appreciates the naivete that he has in the first 2 seasons, the greenness of him in the first couple of seasons, especially in that early first season. He doesn't quite know what he's getting into. He's eager. He's jumping in maybe a little too quickly. But I think when I think of Enterprise and why I love it, I think of T'Pol and Trip a little bit more than Archer.
Okay.
And maybe the fact that he, if I'm being really honest, might be my 3rd favorite character in that show. And T'Pol and Trip are a little above him. Maybe that pushes him down the list a little bit for me. And I also, if Enterprise had gone, and this is not to punish Enterprise for not having gone 7 seasons, it's not that show's fault, I don't think. But if the show would have played out, I think the best things were yet to come for that character. I think the continuing steps toward the Federation, the stuff that you see him doing in season 4, kind of being more actively like the go-between between the Vulcans, the Andorians, the Tellarites. I think we undoubtedly would have gotten more of that, and I think seeing that evolution more probably would have maybe pushed him up the list a little bit for me. But
okay.
I think I love him. I really love Scott Bakula's performance. I love the character's arc. I love the way he changes over time. I love the sort of hitch point between seasons 2 and season 3, where you really see that change, and the way he struggles with that change, having to become more hardened and tough. I love that arc. But these are all great characters, and somebody had to go. So
yeah,
he would be my number 6.
Okay. Yeah, your number 5 is obviously Janeway.
Yeah, Janeway. You know, she's a great character. I think there are times where I don't want to say she's inconsistent, but I think there are times when I feel like, I guess my favorite thing about the Janeway character is the undying devotion to like Starfleet principles, like the fact that she thinks that the key to surviving and making it through this time, the challenge of getting through the Delta Quadrant alive and getting home, is sticking to the principles that have allowed the Federation to flourish over, by that point, 250, 300 years, right?
Yeah.
Going back. I think resisting the temptation to do it the Maquis way, or do it the Equinox way later on, is what I love about the character. And when those things are really on the forefront of the story, she really shines in episodes like Equinox, in episodes like Alliances, early, where she's really the Void, where she's really tested with which way to go. But there are times where I think she's a little fast and loose with the Prime Directive.
What captain isn't though? What captain isn't?
True. That's true. That's definitely true. Definitely true. But I feel like the other characters don't necessarily lean so heavily on the fact this is what gets us through this. You know, like the character on one hand leans so heavily. These are our principles. This is what we have to do. This is how we have to do it. Where there are other times where she's a little more gung ho. And don't get me wrong. Like sometimes when she's gung ho and she's kind of kicking back, just like when Kirk does it, it's kind of badass. Like I certainly get it. I mean, it makes for good TV and it makes for good Star Trek.
Yeah.
But maybe it's also similar to what I kind of said with Enterprise. You know, when I think of Voyager, Janeway, while she's certainly in the upper tier of characters, you know, I think of the Doctor. I think of Seven of Nine. I think Tom Paris. You know, there are characters that I maybe prefer to Janeway, where some of these other characters higher up on the list, I probably would inch towards the top, very, very top of my characters from those shows. Or at least maybe there's less disparity between those characters and others.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, no disrespect to Janeway. These characters are all great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yes.
Dad's in the chat asking if it's because of the caretaker or what you did too. No, no specific reason. Really, like specific things you did in this episode or that episode would, you know.
Yeah.
I can't point to an episode and say that's why. It's personal preference and some broad strokes kinds of things, but she does. Rob even says, and as somebody who put her first, she does have some questionable command decisions, but they all do. I mean, I have to admit that all these characters make decisions that are you could maybe categorize as questionable. So yeah. What about your 4? What about Sisko? Why Sisko?
Sisko at 4, I think is higher for me just because I watched the documentary. It kind of brought up some memories, but again, I go back to how that character developed over 7 seasons. I think that's kind of what goes into why he's maybe higher than maybe in past. Thinking back to my list, kind of maybe 6 months ago or before that. But I just think that, again, that character development, I look for in a captain and in characters. So that's why kind of Sisko for me is high, or than Archer and maybe some of these other captains for sure.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I have him at 3.
Okay.
One spot up. Maybe I'll talk about him real quick. Maybe just we're kind of close together. I'll just say that, you know, my favorite thing about Sisko is similar to what I was kind of saying about Archer, who didn't make my list, is the character arc. I love the fact that at the beginning of Deep Space Nine, Sisko is at the maybe last place he wants to be. The last thing he wants to be doing is sitting on a space station far, far away, you know, dealing with a political crisis on a planet that he really wants nothing to do with. That's the evolution from that to, say, at the end of season 5, as they're abandoning the station, the war is starting, and he's talking to the Bajoran people on the station, saying, "This is my home. This is where I need to be. This is the place. This is my home." You know, seeing that change over the course of the 5 years, and at the end of the show, he's building a house on Bajor. He decides this is where I want to be. This is where I want to live. You know, he's kind of grown into, you know, the best version of himself. You know, seeing his skepticism about, you know, the role of the emissary, you know, being seen as sort of a religious icon on Bajor, and you know, slowly kind of finding his way to embracing, you know, through his respect for the Bajoran people and a protective, I think, you know, instinct to, you know, the role he plays even as a Starfleet captain, you know, as the captain of Deep Space Nine. that protective instinct, I think, might like open the door for him to get to a place where he can embrace being the emissary. That I love those journeys, and I love the fact that he can't. He's sort of the opposite of Janeway. He knows he's out there by himself in a very gray area that's not surrounded by Federation ideals, and he kind of has to play on the fringes and play in the gray area. He has to make difficult decisions. He's in war for a big chunk of it. And
yeah.
There's an interesting, opposite nature there between Janeway and Sisko, and how they both kind of react. It's sort of similar situations, kind of, but and not having the backup and not having the Picard being the flagship of the Federation, sort of, so.
Yep.
Yeah, he's the character arc is what carries the day for Sisko for me.
Yeah. I guess moving on to your number 4. Why Pike?
Why Pike? I think my favorite thing about what season 2 of Discovery does is the way it plays with the Pike character that we kind of know a little bit about in TOS. He's certainly he's a unique animal in TOS. He's in the unaired pilot. He's sort of in the DNA of the very, very beginnings of Star Trek, and then they have used that episode as a clip show basically with the Menagerie, and he's sort of the first. The Menagerie is sort of the first foray for Star Trek into like this is a big universe with a past, and like these. It plays with like a timeline, and Spock was on the ship serving under this different captain years before. Like it's the first time Star Trek really plays with this whole idea that it really becomes what it ultimately maybe its most defining trait. It's this big universe you can play in, and there's a timeline, and there's a past and a future, and different places you can go with it. So Pike's been there since day one, and is a very essential character. Very, very little known about him. We have this one story that is sort of associated with that character, and the way Discovery expands on that while still and allowing the character to kind of operate on his own and do new things and stretch beyond the Talos 4 story, and being crippled and going back to Talos 4. The way that it allows that character to operate outside of that story while still capitalizing on that trait is sort of the crowning achievement of that season for me.
Yeah.
The way that the season basically operates as a sequel to The Cage, but a prequel to the Menagerie. You can see how he gets to what decision he ends up making in Menagerie to go back to Talos 4 and end up choosing to live there. And the way that he, coming off of season 1 of Discovery, where the character, this is one of the, certainly not saying anything groundbreaking here, but one of the things that the character, one of the things that the character really does is coming off of Lorca, and the way that the crew reacted to Lorca and the betrayal that Lorca kind of brings to the table, makes the gung-ho Starfleet, principled, walk the line, really, really resonate from Pike.
Yeah.
The crew needs that coming off of the Pike or the Lorca. So it's definitely really refreshing, especially I think when you look at Discovery from the lens of the first Star Trek show.
Yeah.
In how many years? It's been a long time. We're hungry for it. We're eager for it. And then Discovery comes after all that dry spell, and you get Lorca, who's kind of a bad guy. He doesn't really do the Starfleet thing.
No.
Even when you think he's a good guy, he's operating on the fringe.
Starfleet captain.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
They come across a endangered Gormagander, and he says, "I don't care. Just do what you got to do." Like he's not doing what the typical Star Trek captain would do. So you get Star Trek back in the form of Discovery, and you're still kind of hungry for that feeling. And then Pike comes along in season 2, and he's sort of the shot in the arm of this is Star Trek. We got a captain who is point towards the light. all the time. I think that quenched a lot of people's thirst, and I think that's why he's high on a lot of people's list.
Yeah. Yeah.
True. Stress-free K. That's something I said.
Great point. Great point.
It's very, yeah. That's the Discovery dynamic. You know, certainly there are people out there who are not huge fans of Discovery. I assume those characters would not factor very highly on those lists. You know, people who feel that way. But even people who love Discovery, it's hard to compare Pike, Lorca to characters like Kirk and Picard, who have this like big body of work and huge background and a deep bench of episodes.
Yeah. I'm gonna pop up real quick. Puppy needs to go out. I'll be back in like 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'll talk to the chat.
Cool.
Cover what we got. Rob says Pike is just so noble. He's totally relatable, friendly, kind, understanding. Yeah, I mean, Pike embodies all of the traits that a typical, you know, Star Trek captain that we're used to is sort of assumed to have. He says he's a superb captain, very best Starfleet, and yeah, that I love that too. I love Cornwell talking. You know, Pike obviously is struggling throughout the season with this idea that he was sidelined during the Klingon War, and I know there's a novel out that really plays with the idea and expands on it and see it while it's happening during the war. But you know, Cornwell, you know, telling Pike that, you know, one of the reasons we left you on the sideline is because we wanted to make sure that the best of Starfleet survived. We didn't want the top of the line to sort of get wiped out in the war. If it's going to be a desperate situation and there's only going to be a few of us left, we want it to be the best of us to give us the best chance to, you know, keep moving forward in some fashion. I think Pike's actions up to that point, when that gets said by Cornwell about halfway through the season, maybe even a little more than halfway, I think the character has earned that. I think the audience buys that. I certainly did. His actions up to that are earn that line. Pike's presence just commands the bridge so well. Yeah, Pike doing the roll call, brother, the way he introduces himself and talks to the crew and acknowledges he knows what Lorca was and knows what the crew had to deal with, certainly sets the tone. And there are many, many more scenes to come after Brother where he's on the bridge and commanding the crew in the way that you envision a Star Trek captain would do it. In Rob's mind, Pike is the perfect blend of all of the captains. Respect, and as a diplomat like Picard, he has a sense of family and loyalty in his crew like Janeway. Absolutely, yeah, I think that's a great point. Stern and authoritative like Sisko when he needs to be, suave and handsome like, yeah, he gets a little bit from all the captains. I think that's definitely true when you think about it that way. When you think about his traits and, you know, who he compares to in that way. Where would Georgiou fit on our list if it continued beyond 5? Georgiou, I mentioned this at the very beginning of the show. Adam kind of jokingly mentioned Jellicoe, and I said that a character like Jellicoe, a character like Ransom, a character like Commodore Decker, there are all these like one-off captains who have very small sample sizes, like one episode, maybe a two-parter, that I think almost fit into their own category. Captain Garrett of the Enterprise, that I think I have a hard time putting in the same category as these other captains who are there for extended periods of time, whether it's one season like Pike or Lorca, or 7 like Picard, Sisko, Jay. I feel like Georgiou probably fits more comfortably into that discussion, and she would be very high on that list. You know, I think of it's a tricky thing because you get a lot of Michelle every, but it's sort of two different characters, and the only time we really get Captain Georgiou, prime timeline, our Captain Georgiou is the first couple of episodes of Discovery. But she reminds me of Pike in a lot of ways. I think she's similar to Pike. She's got all those classic Star Trek captain traits. She's exactly what you envision a Star Trek captain to be. She clearly thinks of the crew like a family. She's very casual with them, but she's very stern at the same time. She can you know, operate on both sides of that line. She's an explorer at heart, but she can operate in a combat situation just as effectively. You know, she's, you know, leans on the right side of history. It feels like she's making good decisions for good reasons. So, Stress-Free K says he wonders if the short treks will be Pike, Spock, he or she. I'm not sure what I should say, but will be Pike, Spock, and number 1 will take place before Disco's timeline. That's a good question. It feels like at least one of them might be before the Disco timeline. I think in one of the clips in the trailer, number 1 calls Spock and he's beaming onto the ship. I suspect that's probably the turbo lift one that might take place like as Spock is coming onto the Enterprise for the first time, I'm guessing, maybe. But we'll find out hopefully pretty soon. Acting Captain Saru is pretty awesome. If Saru becomes the captain in season 3, I guess Saru becomes a part of this conversation, which would be interesting and different. Yeah. Dan has a new member of the family.
Yes, I apologize for the disruption in the stream, but yeah, I just wanted to introduce you guys to Goose. He needed to go out, so just did a quick bathroom run.
Brand new puppy.
Yes. So where were we?
A lot of talk about Pike. A lot of feedback in the chat.
Okay.
From Rob, from Stress-Free K, from Adam. We kind of talked about.
Your dad had a great question that I wanted to touch on when we get there.
Yeah, I didn't touch that because you weren't here.
Okay.
Talking about your list.
Yeah.
Talking about Kirk and Janeway, which I think we should probably save for when we get to the top of your list because they're your top. So we'll double back.
Yes.
Rob, Dan did not name his puppy Porthos.
No. That was on the list, though. But wife, Mrs. Trek Live, wasn't going for it.
Dude. Getting some feedback, apparently, about your mic. Some echo.
Is that any better? How does it sound for you, Bill?
It sounds fine for me. I didn't hear an echo.
Okay.
But I'm listening to you through Discord, not YouTube, so maybe I'm hearing differently. While you give Dan feedback and hopefully letting him know that it sounds better, much better.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
Stress-Free K wants to know what in the world the Enterprise was doing during the Klingon. Apparently, there's a book. There's a novel called The Enterprise War that tackles that exact subject. So go check that out. It's the newest Discovery novel, and I believe it is completely about that. It's what was Pike doing? What was what kind of missions were they on when while the Klingon War was raging on?
Yep.
So you can find out if you read the book.
Yep. Let's.
Yeah, I kind of talked about Cisco, so why don't we do this? So instead of you talking about Picard, why don't you talk about Janeway and maybe kind of address what my dad said about Kirk and Delta Quadrant, because Kirk and Picard are my number 1 and 2. They're your 1 and 3. Maybe tackle Kirk and Picard together, I guess. I don't know. Does that sort of make sense? Like back to back?
Kind of. Picard is much higher on my list kind of right now because I just finished TNG in light of the show. I really put his character under the microscope because the first time I watched it wasn't really high on Picard, but now it's just I feel like I see him in a whole new light. So that's why he's number 3. So yeah, that's Picard. Kirk. You guys asked Prime Timeline or Kelvin. I'm gonna cheat and say both. I think if I had to put one above the other, Prime Timeline. I think especially since I'm in TOS season 1. I think from the very very first episode, very first line of dialogue, Shatner kills the performance. He is Kirk right away. So yeah, that's kind of why Kirk. I don't know. I just find his kind of his character my favorite because that's why. Kirk from the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean,
I love his balance of, shooting from the hip, but also very logical in his demeanor. So, yeah. If that made any sense.
You've been very consistent. Yeah, I think it did. Since the very beginning, since I've known you, you've been pretty consistent with Kirk. Kirk is your sort of your captain, and I guess probably you're like envisioning like what is Star Trek. Captain Kirk is sort of Star Trek to you, right? Like he embodies that's Star Trek in a nutshell, right?
Exactly. Yes, and
yeah.
The other aspect is why Kirk is number one is captains in general are in a place of leadership. If I was gonna be in that place, I would try to emulate Kirk above all the rest of the captains. So that's why he's also at number one.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Kirk is almost, it's impossible. It's very difficult to justify for me even not having Kirk number one. But it's a personality thing. It's a personal preference. But it's very hard to argue with Kirk sort of being the defining face of what is Star Trek. Kirk and Spock is certainly like the easiest thing to point to and say that's Star Trek in a nutshell. And like you said, I think the caricature of Kirk that can sometimes get out there is highly inaccurate. That he's sort of just shoot from the hip, ladies man. Like there's so much more to him than that. And I think like early in season one, it's so it's more rich than that. I think he's more logical and diplomatic than maybe some give him credit for. Stress Free K is not.
He does not agree with you on that aspect.
No. He or she thinks Kirk is too much of a womanizer. Many of the episodes go off kilter and violate the Prime Directive because Kirk can't seem to keep it in his pants. See, now that's not
great point.
Completely uncommon. You certainly hear that, and I would certainly respect that. If TOS being a product of its time certainly leads to episodes that, particularly in season 3, I think Kirk finds himself in situations where he is with female characters and maybe using them to get to an end that certainly can rub people the wrong way, and sometimes it rubs me the wrong way. Some of those episodes are not my favorites for sure. But I think when I think of Kirk, I think of episodes like Balance of Terror and the Corbomite Maneuver and The City on the Edge of Forever and Amok Time, where he is fiercely loyal to his crew, to his friends. I think of him in The Search for Spock. His ship. In an episode like Corbomite Maneuver, he's anything but the character that I think some people might paint. He's 100% in command. He's thoughtful. He's at the point where he breaks away from Baylock and is sort of one the Fesarius and that the Baylock threat. He doesn't choose to just like leave him behind and work off or blow him up. He goes back and saves him and wants to make first contact in the right way. And I think that's sort of the defining trait for me for Kirk.
Your pops, I want to kind of circle back to that kind of question.
Sure.
Dan's list really makes me think that Janeway is the closest captain to Kirk. I think that because Kirk, along with Janeway, have this really like calm, cool demeanor about them when they're making decisions and command decisions, and also they're also they command by a committee. Also, they take in advice from first officer, whether it be Spock. Any members of the crew, and I like that in a captain as well. So I see a lot of similarities between the two characters for sure. Now their situation and their command couldn't be more different. So take that for kind of what you will, but I really do think that there is some similarities there for sure.
There are, and they're different in some ways, but I do one of the things that TOS I think does a pretty good job conveying is that space is really big. I think we've talked about this on the show in the past, and that I think TOS does a pretty nice job of making it feel like Kirk doesn't always have help right around. Where sometimes in the 24th century shows, obviously not Voyager, but DS9 and TNG, especially TNG, it feels like the ship can kind of get around the galaxy.
Yes.
Like you can get to it, start.
There's help. Like,
it feels like
there's help light years away. Yeah.
Yeah, you can make a call, and a couple ships are going to show up and have your back. Where in TOS, it feels a little bit more like he's out there on, and help's not always a phone call. And I always kind of credit that to it's the 23rd century. It's not the 24th. They're pushing out more. They're the Constitution class ships are on the far edge and going in different directions and run into each other a lot less. So I think Kirk probably does have the closest to Janeway's situation, being a little further out, and where I feel like Picard's mission. One of the things that people maybe even knocked TNG for back in the day is it felt less like they were going out and exploring strange new worlds as opposed to kind of bouncing around the Alpha Quadrant and going to like this political crisis on this planet, go solve it. And, like negotiating, playing the political diplomat, which makes a lot of sense coming from when you think about the Enterprise D is the flagship. Picard's like the tier 1 captain. He is the captain. He's the captain of the flagship. Would be kind of going around doing that, and showing the flag and setting the tone. Where Kirk feels like he's more just kind of out there and pushing. He's certainly going outward where Janeway's trying to come back, which is a very different thing. I think they're different things. But I think for that reason, I think Kirk probably, of the other characters, of all these other captains, I think he has the easiest. I have the easiest time envisioning him doing what Janeway did. Success. When I think of like what other captain could sub into that role, I think Kirk is the easiest sell to get stranded deep space and get back, because I feel like his mission, while very different, is more similar than say Sisko or Picard's, for example, or even Archer's. Archer can always call the Vulcans if he needs to. Even though he's the only. He's not going out that far in the grand scheme of things. He certainly is in the 22nd century, but when you compare him to the other crew, the other captains, he never. Maybe that's a failing of Enterprise that where they fell short. It didn't always feel like so far out that he, could never get help. It always felt like the Vulcans were kind of hovering just in the shadows, following him around and watching him.
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like the choice between is always sort of the question with this, and it's been the question for as long as TNG existed, I guess. Kirk Picard is always like the big debate. But for me, it's Picard, and a lot. It's personal. It's who speaks to you, but Picard is I think sort of a Renaissance man. He's as comfortable in talking about Shakespeare as he is talking about anthropology, as he is talking about diplomacy. While Janeway, like we talked about Janeway, the character that maybe her defining characteristic is like the leaning heavily into Starfleet principles, and talks a lot about that. I think Picard accomplishes the same thing without necessarily having to wear it on his sleeve. But and again, they're very different circumstances. Janeway's out there by herself, dealing with a Maquis crew. She has to lean. She has to be outward about it. She has to sell it. For Picard, I feel like it's just in Picard's. Yeah, she has to convince her crew. She has to convince Chakotay, convince B'Elanna Torres, and all these Maquis people surrounding her, where she has no backup to buy into that philosophy. It feels like it's just in Picard's DNA. It's part of who he is. It's just something he exudes every minute of every day. That this is just what we do. He walks the walk very easily. It feels natural. He's also he's not perfect. He's not comfortable around kids. He's not the most socially adept. He's not always, he doesn't fit into every social situation like a glove. It's not always easy. But I've said it before many times. Like when I think of like my career, when I'm doing something, doing this, doing that, he is the character that would he do? How would he handle this kind of situation? How would he talk to this person? What would Picard do? Is like the constant in my life, and it's because I grew up watching him. He was like, to me, he's like the perfect human being. He does everything for the right reasons. He doesn't make the right decisions. He's not perfect, but he's always doing it for the right reasons. And I feel like the different things you see him do over the course of TNG is also a big part of it. The variety of missions, the variety of challenges that he has to overcome. Like episodes like Darmok, learning how to communicate, how to talk to people, how to see things from somebody completely different point of episodes like the Drumhead, where he has to stand up for the right thing against a more powerful person than he is. A very decorated, legendary admiral who has a completely different philosophy on how to deal with, a big problem. He doesn't just take it lying down. He does it in a dignified way and fights back, and sells his side by handling it the right way. I always say that in my favorite moment for Picard comes in the Offspring, when he stands up and says, "Not on my ship," when the admiral getting ready to take Data's daughter, Lal. To me, that's like the moment that Picard is like at his best. So these are all, Rob's having Janeway number one, you're having Kirk number one, are equally valid, and they're all personal things.
Right.
It's the character that spoke to you. Mm-hmm. But when I think of Star Trek, it's certainly easy, like Spock and Picard. For me personally, when I think of Star Trek, I see Jean-Luc Picard. Okay. That's like, he's the embodiment of, what does life look like in the Star Trek universe? Like, he is like the peak. He's the thing that people are trying to reach.
Yeah.
Because the characters are trying to reach that. The other characters, that's what I'm trying to. On the other side of the TV.
Okay.
So, Ian Davies is here. Sorry he's late. Rugby was on.
Welcome, Ian.
Cool. Welcome. He says he always liked Data in command. And that's Rob saying he thinks Chakotay would have made a good captain. Saru still needs some seasoning. I guess we're talking about other characters who might be good captains. Yeah, Rob asked what non-captain character would make a good captain. That's an interesting topic. Do we do that? Do we have? I think we might have had an episode.
Maybe.
I think we
it sounds familiar.
Maybe like over a year ago. Yeah, non-captains who would make good captains.
Yeah.
Go back into our archives. You might find an hour of conversation just about that.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
What was the hardest part of this list for you? Like, what part of was it?
The hardest part, I think, the hardest part for me was really putting this down on paper and kind of putting this semi in stone, because, looking back at the rankings,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Rob says he can't hear you. unfortunately.
What was tough for me also was putting your list together as well. So that's along with putting my list, that was tough too. But kind of figuring out what yours was definitely a different challenge because I feel like we've thought about our rankings for since we've been watching Star Trek, but putting yourself in a different mindset and in a kind of a different box to try to guess someone else's rankings is definitely fun. So I think this is definitely this series.
It's an interesting.
This series is here to stay, for sure.
Yeah, it's fun to. It's just a different like Trek ranks. It's not so much about like definitively this is better than that. It's just a unique kind of different way to think about these things.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself to like, define your fandom, sort of like what speaks to you, what resonates with you personally.
Yeah.
But I agree. The difference between topic and the last one we did like this was with the characters. It's such a huge bench. Like there's so many of them.
Yeah.
While that was really difficult, like being fifth on the list, favorite characters in Star Trek history is an easier thing for me to like that's
right.
not an insult, but
yeah.
fifth captain, because there's only 5 or 6
right.
or 7 of them depending on how you count,
yeah,
is like you said, putting Archer fifth, for me putting Janeway fifth, leaving Archer off of it is like painful. But the character thing wasn't quite that. The challenge there was there's so many of them, who do you put on? But the captains, it feels dirtier to put somebody fifth than to leave somebody off. It's harder. You feel like you're doing somebody dirty, and that sucks. And as somebody who loves to rank, because of that, like I said, it's just a cool way to like think about it. And as somebody who's watched these episodes and watched these shows 100 times and has been watching them all my ranking them is like a cool exercise for me to like think about it a little differently and force myself to be a little bit. It forces me to not just watch it with background noise. Like to have it on is something that's just sort of happening in the background as comfort, sound. It forces me, if I'm trying to do something like that, it forces me to sit and like give it my attention and try to be more critical than not. So it gives me that to keep it alive and keep it relevant, no matter how many times I've seen it. And it's interesting to think about like how my rankings change and how as I age and do different things, how does it? Because I know, like you said, Picard kind of went up based on this last time for you, right? Like each time you go back to it and each time you revisit and change yourself, it's gonna change. Like I'll be honest, if I was watching Enterprise, like if I was rewatching Enterprise, Archer totally would have been on this list, and Janeway probably wouldn't have been. Like that's probably what would have happened. And if this was a year ago, Pike wouldn't have been on this list. It would have been the 5 from the first 5 shows, and that would have been it. So it's going to change based on what's on and watching, and what feels relevant to you at that time. So it's definitely like a capturing one point in time thing for me. I can't lie and say that it's like in stone forever. It's going to be this. It'll change.
Yep. Mark this day in history. Bill does not have an Enterprise character on his list, so.
I know.
Yep.
It's not always that way.
Yeah. All fun aside, I think you're definitely right on that. I think that it's definitely going to change for me, this list. Maybe, a few different positions here or there. But I feel like for me, thinking about it, 1, 2, I think might stay the same. I could see, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 could change a little bit, just depending, like you said, to the day of the week, the direction of the wind. But I think kind of 1 and 2 for me are kind of really solid. It's going to take a lot to kind of dethrone those 1, 2. So totally agree.
Yeah. Picard, I can't envision a scenario for Picard. For me, it comes off number 1, and I can't envision a scenario. It would be a different. I don't see a scenario where Kirk comes down from 2, but 3, 4, 5, I think definitely is subject to a lot of change depending on move.
Anything else
with this topic? Not really. No,
okay.
I think we covered it. I think it's a tough thing. The other part of this is, with the character conversation, there was variety. I think it's you're covering different characters. There was some definite overlap with our lists. With something like this, we're kind of dealing with the same pool of characters. So we kind of bounced around a little bit, didn't necessarily stick to like the exact order of our, but I think we covered all the characters and why we ultimately like all of them.
Yeah. All right. I guess I'd probably like to save maybe some Star Trek content for next week, possibly, and just kind of substitute in what we're doing later on today.
Yeah, later today, 6 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to open up our Discord server for a casual hangout. We're going to watch episodes. We're going to play trivia. We're going to do who knows what. Dan's got all kinds of things. I think he's got some things planned. I don't want to put too much pressure on.
No, I have things planned.
We have things planned.
Yeah, we're doing another Trek After Dark. It's super fun. I can't recommend it highly enough. And if you say, Dan, I don't have a computer, I don't have a mic, I don't have a camera, that's okay. You can get set up on your phone. If you have a computer, you can just still, a phone or a computer, you can still stay in the chat. There's a chat area. We've had people just in the chat. You don't have to be crazy like us. You don't have to be on the mic. You don't have to be on anything. You can be on the chat as well. It makes it fun doing trivia. You gotta type fast. So yeah, it should be fun. Along with trivia, I'm thinking about. I've got some who said it questions. I've got some quotes from Trek, some non-Trek. So I'm gonna say that you guys have to guess who said it. Those bonus points if you can name the episode, the show, and all that stuff like that. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Not just trivia. We're gonna be watching episodes, and we don't have to talk about Trek too. It's anything anything goes. So yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, we've done it a couple of times. I think we've done it 3 times this year, and we've had a good time every time. So definitely reach out to me on Twitter if you are not in the Discord server already, which I think most of the people who are in the chat right now, I know Adam is, I know Rob is, but the others, if you would like to participate, shoot me a DM at TrekFan4387 on Twitter, and I'll send you an invite to the Discord server. And once you can you're there. As long as you're on Discord, you can pop into the chat, and like Dan said, you don't have to come on camera if you're not comfortable doing that. You don't even need to come on mic. You can kind of just watch us, anybody who is on camera, type into the chat and talk about anything you want to. Be a part of the conversation. So it's sort of this, but everybody can participate, and it's a little more casual, relaxed than this is.
Yeah.
And Dan might or might not very, very drunk. To do such things.
Yes, definitely get a hold of either of us or some of our, Trek Live senior staff, Trekkie Rob. Thad is a good resource as well. They can help you out as well.
Right.
So yeah, I think we're gonna sign off for now. We'll be back on later on today, not on the YouTube channel, but again on the Discord server. So.
Right.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. It's been fun talking Trek. We'll see you guys next week or later on today.
Yep. Thanks for watching.